and welcome to Amazon Q4 Mastery, and we are on day 3. In today's episode, we are going to be discussing about Amazon Q4 and how you can take care of your account's health, and that will take care of your reviews. We have Scott Margolius with us, and he is called as the Amazon Problem Solver. He helps protect Amazon and eBay sellers, and he helps clean up the mess that people might have created in terms of bad reviews, and he helps getting products get unbanned from Amazon. And he also does consultation, and he is also ready to help you guys with ungating, and he also helps with listing optimization. Hi, Scott.
Hey, how are you doing?
And our next moderator for today is Nithin. Nithin is the director of customer success team, and he deals with a lot of sellers as well. He worked in Whirlpool, and he took care of cross-border dealings then, and now he's working with SellerApp, where he's taking care of a lot of sellers on Amazon, which are very successful in their own fields. Hi, Nithin.
Hey, everybody. So we're just so glad that we have this Q4 Mastery session, and we're just trying to create this whole ecosystem that with all our partners, we have Score and we have multiple partners to help all the sellers with any problem that they have on Amazon. So it's just amazing to be part of this as well. And I'm sure even Scott is as excited as we are here.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to have both of you. Yeah, because I think with Scott's expertise on how to not get your products banned on Amazon, and his experience on how you can help Amazon sellers deal with these really complicated problems, I think Scott is your man. And when you want to sell on Amazon and how you want to fix your problems and to make your journey a little bit more easier, Nithin is your man. So let's get started with the session. So Scott, I have a question for you.
Sure.
How do you approach the review of your account health dashboard?
Well, a lot of it obviously starts with taking a look at the dashboard itself, being familiar with what's going on with all of the different aspects of your account and the various different places that you can go to make sure that you're staying on top of that. In fact, if you're not doing that, that's something that you should be integrating immediately. There should be someone on your team who has their finger on the pulse of what's going on with your account. And if you don't have somebody doing that, or you're not doing it yourself, you really ought to start doing that immediately. It's critical and necessary, especially going into Q4. As many of you may be aware, this is the time now up until October where historically, annually, Amazon has gone in to have their yearly purge of accounts that might not be doing everything that they should be doing. And so one of the places that you would go, obviously, is your account health dashboard to see what's going on, to see the notifications that you've received, and to make sure that you're responding to them on a regular basis. You'd be looking at your account health and you'd be looking at your notifications, but you want to make sure to go into each and every single one of them to make sure that you've marked them as read and to take necessary and appropriate action. And not just monitoring, but one thing that's often misunderstood is the number of those notifications that need a specific type of response. A lot of the time, Amazon will ask for you to make sure that you're aware of what's going on, but then you'll need to respond in such a way as to get that notification removed. So it has to be addressed, and usually with the plan of action, I've found that that's not happening a lot of the time, and complaints will arise on an account, and a seller might not be aware of the fact that those are marks against you that Amazon's considering as part of your overall rating of your health behind the scenes, to say, hey, these are your diagnostics, and it looks really bad if, one, you're not looking at those notifications, if you're not replying to them in a timely manner, and if you're not getting them actually removed from your account. Especially anything having to do with, let's say, the more significant issues like IP complaints or suspected intellectual property complaints, listing blocks, all those kinds of things. Most of the time, sellers are looking at that as like, oh, this is affecting my sales. But nothing affects your sales more than if you don't have an account. If you're not able to sell, especially going into Q4, a lot of what can be caused by that is these sort of latent issues like IP complaints or inauthentic complaints, used sold as new, all those kinds of things. They all need addressed for the most part. And so you've got to have somebody on your team who's not only monitoring those things, but taking care of them and getting them removed so that you have the ability to sell again for each of those notifications.
Yeah, definitely. And IP is so important right now, considering that Amazon has put a limit to your FPS storage for this Q4 season. So if your IP score is, let's say, less, how can people increase their IP score to make sure that they get a space for their inventory in their FBA warehouses? Nithin, can you answer this question for me?
If I could interject real quickly.
All right. Yeah, definitely.
It could be easy to misunderstand when they should have come up with a different name than the IPI score for inventory, because it's easy to confuse that with IP complaints, which have to do with intellectual property. And they're quite different. And it's kind of like confusing the difference between seller feedback versus product reviews. And there, a lot of the time, a seller might not necessarily understand the difference of the terminology, but that's where it's important to know, hey, an IP complaint having to do with intellectual property, having to do with trademark or copyright, could completely torpedo your account. And in fact, it's one of the worst things that's happening right now in terms of the least amount of control that a seller has in order to protect their account, because there are so many people who can, whether they're competitors or whether they're brand owners or somebody who's completely anonymous, can easily log into Amazon right now, file a complaint, and have that cost you your account if you're not paying really close attention and responding immediately. That's, I mean, red alert, all hands on deck. Those are big problems. And that's different than your IPI score, which obviously people need to be paying very close attention to, because it's limiting the amount of space that you have at FBA and other factors that come into play there, but completely different issues.
Right. Thanks for clarifying that, Scott. And Nithin, could you please elaborate on the IPI score issue?
Yeah, so that's actually perfectly articulated by Scott right there, right? So it's so a lot of customers and sellers, they come back to us with this IP score issues. And a lot of times they get confused, like Scott articulated, that they confuse between intellectual property as well and with inventory performance, right? So I think that is very important in terms of, in these unprecedented times, right? We've seen this huge trend of movement from a brick and mortar store into people buying on the e-commerce platform. And I think that kind of translates into Amazon's recent data, where they speak about close to 46% growth rate on e-commerce itself in the last couple of months, owing to this COVID pandemic outside. So it just becomes more important that we really take a closer look in terms of ensuring that we have the right inventory going forward in this in the Q4 season, because like how Scott mentioned correctly, right? This is the peak season. It's the peak purge, like how Scott mentioned, in terms of how customers really tend to buy because it's the gifting season. You have Halloween, you have the Black Friday, you have Christmas, you have a lot of festive seasons coming in the last quarter, and people really do a lot of buying and shopping in terms of either gifting it or just we've also seen a trend where in a couple of weeks before the season starts off, there is a slight dip in sales, because people are then just trying to plan out their purchases and they just want to wait for the offers that are launched during these holiday seasons. So it's very important that we plan it out. We have ready inventory, at least if not in the Amazon's warehouse, have it ready at the seller's warehouse to send it across immediately as soon as they kind of see the trends coming down. So keeping a very close watch on how the performance of the inventory is happening is very important. It kind of gives you a predictability score as well in terms of how many days the stock might last in the warehouse. So once we have all these metrics sorted out, and we should really be keeping a close eye on them on every single day, just so we don't miss out on those sudden unusual spikes in terms of orders that are coming our way. We need to be really prepared in terms of managing those spikes, because it doesn't really make sense just overflooding Amazon's warehouse. And during these times, even Amazon is really gearing up to ensure they don't manage overstocks, because then there'll be less stock for other essential goods as well. And they don't really want to start hoarding products within the warehouses. So it really needs to be well planned, and we calculated pretty precisely as to how much has to be sent out, how much can be sent, when it needs to be sent.
What sort of options does SellerApp have related to inventory and related to inventory tracking, inventory control, those sorts of things?
So our dashboard itself has an inventory control. So if you can log into our platform, there's something dedicated absolutely to the sales dashboard where you can keep an eye out on the inventory alert. So you can set up multiple different alerts at an ASIN level to kind of tell you. It gives you features in terms of, okay, these stocks are coming down. These are the kind of quantity that cannot be sold or unfulfilled by Amazon. So there are multiple metrics you can set up on SellerApp's dashboard itself. And that will definitely help you also. It's just another metric, it's just making life a little easier in terms of tracking all those metrics. Instead of going at an ASIN level or looking at Amazon Seller Central itself, you could just use our platform to set up those alerts and then hopefully make life easier for you. So we also, along with the inventory alerts, we have this thing called the hacker alert. So you can actually set up those alerts, and SellerApp will initiate those it'll send out those notifications to you once we have some kind of another seller trying to hack your ASIN itself. So that again is going to definitely help in terms of improving your performance or to ensure that there is nothing going wrong with your account.
Yeah, that's critical. I mean, as long as we're talking about inventory, I think it makes sense to talk hand in hand about both sourcing and invoices, because let's face it, on Amazon and really everywhere in commerce, sourcing is everything to a large degree. That's like, if you're talking about your personal health, that's your eating and drinking and possibly your sleep. And it makes so much sense to be, focusing on that, especially going into Q4. Like you said, a lot of people are stocking up, but a lot of it has to also do with making sure that you have the right things and that you have the right number of things. And if you're merchant fulfilled, that you know where they are, as well as how many you have, to be able to pick, pack, and ship on time to meet all the metrics for, uploading your tracking and that sort of thing. And it's very common, especially when your hair's on fire and you're running around trying to get everything fulfilled. If you kind of don't have a good system in place, you don't have the right policies and procedures in place to be able to make sure that this item is at this location in your warehouse, and that you can be assured that you have the right number of those items and you don't oversell, because that's also a significant source of buyer complaints, is either shipping something late or having it be damaged or overselling. And if you have something cross-listed on another platform, you don't want to get in trouble with having to cancel the shipment.
Thank you so much, Scott and Nithin, for clarifying this out, because inventory right now is something that sellers are like burning their hair over, as Scott mentioned, because Amazon has come up with these new rules regarding FBA storage limits, and people are trying to switch between warehouses and trying to become FBM, which is fulfillment by merchant. So it can be really complicated. So thank you for both of you to clearing that out. And the next question is, there are a few items in the inventory that sellers should not replenish and they should remove them. So why do you think there are a few items in the inventory that sellers should remove, and why do you think they should remove it?
Well, one of the things is that you want to regularly review is your returns and your return rate. And, if you're merchant fulfilled, that's one specific place to go and look at product returns. And you also want to review all of your settings for returns for buyers to make it as easy as possible to get something returned. A lot of the time, sellers will put into place like restocking fees, which I think are great, but they're pretty unfriendly as far as the buyer experience. And so the more unfriendly it is, the more likely you are to incur some kind of a complaint. You want to make it as easy as possible for them to make that return, but there's also a place for you to be able to put instructions in with your product, especially if you're private label. You can control a lot more of the experience that a buyer has when they receive a product. And you can say, hey, if you have any trouble whatsoever with such and such an issue or this product or whatever, please get a hold of us. And in some ways, it makes a lot of sense to be in a much more touch with that buyer experience, and to not assume that it's safe to outsource all of your customer service to FBA, because a lot of the time they just don't do a very good job. They might offer they don't necessarily have the ability to offer like a replacement per se. They might offer reimbursement or refund. Well, that's not necessarily what is the best solution for the buyer. And so and that's another thing, is if a buyer reaches out to you, if they give you the opportunity to fix it from a customer service perspective, you want to take that opportunity. You want to fix it. You want to give them as good of an experience as you possibly can, which of course, and then in turn, maybe eliminates the possibility of negative feedback or an A to Z claim. I mean, the worst thing ever is when a frustrated buyer shows up at Amazon and is talking to a representative, and the representative files an A to Z claim on behalf of the buyer. Well, you don't want to deal with that. It would be much better just take care of the situation, whether a refund or a replacement or whatever, instead of an A to Z claim, which is going to count against you. I know that some people think A to Z claims are good and they recommend them. I think they're problematic, and I think that they can cause issues in terms of your ODR score. But whatever it is, whether you agree or disagree, there still has to be a way that you handle things like that internally, in a way that you handle negative feedback, in a way that you normally address product reviews, the way that you're reviewing them all the time to make sure that you have a public response, and then maybe even trying to find the buyer who complained. You want to take care of the customer. It's all about taking care of the customer. It's a lot easier to do, obviously, if you have higher quality products. And so in terms of reviewing your inventory, I don't like to source anything that's less than 3.5 stars. And that's been something that I've used as a filtering criteria for me ever since I first started selling. And I recommend that quite a bit. I don't want to deal with something where a buyer's going to be dissatisfied. So whether you're private label and you're designing your product or designing your packaging, or whether you're, RA, OA, wholesale, whatever it is, you want to avoid the things where buyers typically complain about a certain situation with the product. You want to take care of things like the product description to make sure that whatever you're listing is exact match against the product detail page. Just having buyers' expectations not be met is enough to cause them to complain. And so you should be regularly monitoring that. You should be regularly removing any items that were returned. Make sure you have automated return settings set up for you to be able to remove items from your inventory, so that hopefully Amazon doesn't sell, resell, repackage something that you're selling that's used. That's obviously a huge source of complaints, and it's a huge source of frustration. So if you can remove products as quickly as possible so that they don't get put back in your inventory. It's hard to say how much that happens, but it does happen. And so anything you can do proactively to prevent that from happening is ideal.
Yeah, and that's such a great advice, because I was just talking about customer experience as well when it comes to Amazon selling. Because if you have an instructional video related to your product, that will be great, because then that will provide customers to go back and look at the instructional video when you are, when you buy the product, you have an instruction video to look at, and that will make selling so much more convenient, and that would be so much convenient for the sellers as well. So Nithin, coming to you, can you tell me why customer experience is important when it comes to Amazon selling, and if you could give the importance to the sellers as well?
Sure. I mean, obviously you want happy customers, and Amazon wants happy customers, and many of the complaints that you see on your account from seller performance have to do with buyer complaints, and many of those have to do with either condition, whether their condition isn't being met, or it was damaged in shipping, and therefore you have to put new processes in place to protect the product and have proper packaging to make sure that it arrives at FBA intact, or arrives all the way to the buyer intact. Those are certainly things that will be helpful. But another source of significant frustration for buyers, and where their expectations aren't met, is if for some reason the product doesn't show up as an exact match against the product detail page. So you want to be constantly monitoring that, and especially if you're sourcing products that aren't yours, they're not, you're not a private label, so you have a little bit less control of the supply chain and how something is developed. I've seen a lot of instances where, for instance, if you're selling shoes, you could have the exact same shoe, the exact same model, and the manufacturer will change, or they'll somehow change the design of the shoe, and you've got to make sure that the shoe that you're selling today is the exact same shoe against the exact same listing that it first was when somebody bought that same shoe that they're trying to buy again, and they last bought it in 2012. A lot can change, about the fit, about the design, about the structure, and manufacturing, all of that for that exact same model of shoe between 2012 and today. There are all kinds of things like that. It happens with backpacks. I mean, as far as design, construction, you want to be constantly monitoring the whole experience for the buyer by making sure that you're making every effort to have that product detail page match.
Yeah, and it's so important to update your pictures as well on Amazon selling page, and there's an option to include videos as well. So if you've been following our videos from the first session, we had a session with John Lawson where he mentioned how you can change your product images to product videos. And if you haven't checked that out yet, please do. That will add so much value to your Amazon selling experience.
Absolutely.
Now,
It's a great opportunity to interact with the buyer and give them a better idea of exactly what they're going to receive, as well as how to use that product in the best possible way so that they have the best experience once they receive it.
exactly, because customer experience, again, I'm sorry I'm emphasizing it so much, but it is very important, because now that you're not selling in your local store, you're not able to provide that good of an customer experience. So once you start selling on Amazon, maybe you can tweak some things with the packaging, or you can even include like a little personal note in your packages to make sure that the customers feel more connected to you and they will buy the products from you again. So our next question is, if you have outstanding notifications, what steps can seller take to get rid of them, and how they can manage their outstanding notification complaints? Scott, first we'll get things from you.
Yeah. I mean, so that could obviously, going back to your account health dashboard, that could exist in a lot of different ways. There are, several different things that you're being shown that you need to address. Each one of them is different. Every single complaint might need to be addressed slightly differently. And one of the best ways that anybody can figure out how they should do that is to start with a very straightforward series of steps that everybody kind of needs to go through when they're creating a plan of action to address those performance notifications. I'm actually going into a lot more detail about that in a book that's coming out, and we'll walk sellers through the things that they need to do and the things that they need to pay attention to. And the basic part of the POA is, in order for you to write one that's effective, that will be received by Amazon in a favorable way, is you've got to figure out the root cause. You've got to determine what caused the complaint and why Amazon thinks there's a problem. And in order to be able to say what you've done to fix it and how you prevent it from happening again, you've got to know what caused it to happen in the first place. And so you've got to know the various different places on your account to look for in order to find those things, because usually there's a smoking gun. A lot of the time you'll find them, especially if it's FBA, in your returns. And so if you were to go into reports, fulfillment, customer concessions, FBA customer returns, in there you'll see a list of the items that were returned. And of course you can search by ASIN, you can search by date, and normally the problem will show up. I'd say 80% of the time you'll find the root cause in this area of your account. And not only that, it will tell you what caused the problem, what the buyer said in terms of why they were dissatisfied, why they were upset, that sort of thing. If you go over to the right-hand side of the display of the information that's provided, you'll see some items that are hot linked in blue, and you can explode that and see what the reason is. That information didn't used to exist. Amazon didn't provide it, even though they had it on their side on the back end. They didn't disclose that to the seller. And now that they do, you should take advantage of that, because a lot of the time that's the starting point to be able to identify the root cause and then be able to address the rest of the issues that are necessary in your plan of action.
The question that you just asked and the previous question, they go hand in hand, right? So the customer experience, what happens is now you have a lot of different media that Amazon is launching to kind of showcase your product. So that kind of really goes a long way in explaining your product and telling the customer what the product is all about. Like probably just 6 months back, we didn't have the option of having a video in our listing, right? And that just changes the ball game, right, completely. Because if, for example, there's this, let's say, for example, a pop-up card. you really don't know the dimensions of the cart. People might just look at the photograph, they might think it's really big or probably very small. Now with the whole option of having a video there, you could take a real lifestyle kind of an image and lifestyle video of it, kind of giving a perception of what the product is all about. And it just adds on to the fact that a person can actually feel the product, because you're really moving a person who cannot now touch the product, who cannot feel the product, to actually giving him the perception of what the product is all about, right? So once that kind of builds up with the videos, with the different kinds of images that you're putting up, and that's exactly why, again, it's very important to have your listing completely optimized, right? With the images and the video. So that goes a long way in kind of helping improve your score on Amazon itself. Exactly what Scott was talking about in terms of your reviews as well. Many times we see the customers expecting something, probably because the listing wasn't really describing what the product is all about, or maybe they misunderstanding the image itself, misunderstanding the dimensions of the product itself.
Yeah, and I was just wondering, now that we have spoken about why feedbacks are important, what do you think a seller should have, like a specific mechanism in place that they can manage all the messages that they're receiving from the sellers and the feedback that they're receiving from the sellers as well? We'll go with Scott first.
Sure. I mean, obviously, you have a system in place to be able to both solicit and respond to feedback, and product reviews as well, a different system, but the same essential basics. And, you know, that's more critical now than ever because of the fact that Amazon's taken away the ability for sellers to get feedback removed very easily. It used to be straightforward. Amazon would listen to logic, and they would listen to reason, and they would be rational, and they would remove feedback for the reasons which they said that they will, but they no longer do. And, you know, part of that might be because their own feedback was so bad. That was the only way they had to level the playing field. If you go and, you know, search the people who are selling a specific product and you see Amazon on the listing, their feedback was terrible. And then you have all these other sellers who are at 100% or, you know, high 90s or whatever. It made it an unlevel playing field for them. Who knows why they changed the feedback system, but now it's really stacked against sellers. And you can't even get feedback removed for the reasons that it should, like, hey, I never even sold that product, or, you know, if it was an FBA problem and it wasn't your issue at all, those aren't getting removed anymore. And so you've got to have specific strategies in place to solicit more positive feedback and to proactively address all of the things that are causing negative feedback on your account. You've got to figure out as quickly as possible by monitoring it what the patterns are that are showing up that would help you prevent that from, you know, happening in the future. And of course, you've got to bend over backwards and provide the very best customer service so that a buyer can say they're completely satisfied, and maybe they'll remove it. Those things are getting more and more challenging. It's trickier all the time. And another reason why you got to really stay on top of buyer-seller messaging and feedback, and you've got to have systems in place for the monitoring of that, especially if you're a solopreneur. You've got to monitor that and respond within, you know, X number of time. I like to say 3 hours, because especially over holidays or vacation or whatever, even if you put your account on vacation mode, that doesn't take away the responsibility of having to respond to all these things on a timely manner.
Yeah, and Nithin, as he's worked with customer success for so long, and I need your expertise here, what are the 2 tips that you can give us to first get your negative reviews down, and second, how you can improve your reviews? So I have noticed that people only comment and review products which they've received are negative. So how do you ensure that you're getting positive reviews on your product as well?
So that's actually perfectly put, because I've heard customers who've come to us complaining about how there was no box for the product and it's not been packed properly by Amazon's warehouse. But then, of course, we can't really blame them also completely, because they've got millions of products to be delivered, right? And so I think there's multiple things that we can do. I think the first thing that's very important is, of course, to ensure that the quality of the product is spot on, right? We absolutely cannot even compromise on the quality of the product, because Amazon rightly so kind of sides on the buyer's side, not on the seller's side, because, you know, end of the day, the customer is who is paying the sellers or Amazon. for the delivery, be it for the product. So we need to ensure the product is spot on, the quality is spot on, and that kind of automatically removes the order defect rate. If you have got the right packing, hardly there's going to be any order defect in terms of people getting broken pieces or non-functional products. And then, of course, like I think Scott mentioned, delivery. At the end of the day, customer success or customer satisfaction is the topmost priority. Just being able to make those small things, having a kind of a note if you're sending it from an FBM, or kind of just saying, ensuring that the delivery kind of the product gets delivered much sooner than it was expected, makes a whole lot of a difference, and that kind of leaves a very big. Absolutely, it leaves a very big impact. Just imagine people like us, if I'm buying from Amazon, I get really excited when it comes earlier than expected, because Amazon says it's going to come in 7 days and I'm getting it in like 3 days. Wow, I get to use my product earlier than expected. So that definitely plays a big role. And it's just all about experience. Like Scott also mentioned about managing those reviews. That again it goes a very long way in terms of building the customer trust, because yes, like you mentioned, Ria, definitely customers, you have a bigger percentage of customers leaving negative reviews than positive reviews, but then we shouldn't take that as a negative thing. We could kind of do something about it to kind of turn the table around. And I think speed is the key, right? The moment someone leaves a negative review, if you're notified about it and you're able to respond to it, there are 2-3 things that happen when customer leaves a negative review. One, he genuinely doesn't like the product, and it's actually a customer feedback that comes to you to kind of find those areas to improve. Everybody is looking at improving the products, improving the experience of the product itself, maybe. So when a customer leaves a feedback, it's extremely important for us to understand what the issue is, and if it's a genuine issue, it gives us 2 things. We can do 2 things. One, we can go back to the drawing boards, kind of revamp the entire design, kind of help in bringing a better product, launching a new product, launching an improvised product, right? But the first thing that we need to do is go and respond to him. The fact that
responding, I think, is very important as well. Yes,
absolutely. Just leaving that message, acknowledging the customer, and ensuring that he gets his issue resolved, kind of a thing, really helps the customer. And for all you know, the customer might come back, buy the product, and then leave a better review next time.
Yeah, as Scott mentioned already, I think responding to the customer negative feedback and, sorting that issue out with them and encouraging them to put up a review saying that, yes, my query has been solved will make a lot of difference in your Amazon listing feedbacks as well. So for those of you watching right now, this question was requested the most from your side, and we also have a lot of questions that you guys requested. So if you have any more questions, leave them in the comment section below, and we will get right to them in the next video. So Scott, we have a next question, which is so widely requested. It's about return rates, and why should I monitor my return rates, and what can I do about my return rates? Because I understand that retail right now is a hot thing in Amazon. It is trending and it is selling, but people often forget that retail also has, especially when it comes to clothing, it also has a very high return rate. So how do you deal with return rates, and how do you, why should one monitor their return rates as well?
So when it comes to the return rates, there are a lot of different things that go into that. And one of them, just before I forget, is you want to make sure if it's merchant fulfilled to buy your shipping from Amazon, because that'll take care of you in a lot of ways when it comes to A to Z complaints or items not received or items that are late. If you buy it from Amazon, you'll be protected a little bit. But beyond that, when it comes to actual return rates, you want to be monitoring that on a regular basis. And I actually hope to be working with SellerApp on a system to do that. But one of the ways that you would do it manually, and we would help you do that as part of an account health assessment, which I strongly encourage sellers to be considering either doing that on their own or hiring somebody like us to help them with that, is in a comprehensive way. One of the things that we would show you what to do, depending upon what you're selling and depending upon the volume, you really ought to be checking something like this on a weekly basis, if not more, but certainly no less than, say, monthly basis. the same report that I mentioned before, when you go into reports, at the top of Seller Central, and you go into fulfillment and then customer concessions and then FBA customer returns, you can get full reporting, let's say of a month or 3 month or whatever, of all of your sales, and then you can export that and then sort it and see a list of all the items that are the highest rates of return, and see what all the reasons are, so that you can begin to either filter those products out proactively. You're not going to sell those things anymore because you're most at risk of having them cause a complaint, or you could possibly adjust whatever the problem is. Like if somebody says all of this certain type of clothing, that they say the product is too large, or they say the product is too small, or it doesn't fit as expected, and they don't give a reason, you can also look at the percentages of fit in the listing itself, and sometimes it'll say, hey, this fits as expected 73% of the time or 86% of the time. I like to kind of look at that and use that as part of my filtering criteria. Not only do you not want to sell something that's maybe less than 3.5 stars, but you might not want to sell something where it only fits 65% of the time, or you might want to do as much as you possibly can to update that listing so that the buyer knows that if I'm ordering a large, that it fits like a medium. Sometimes it's really difficult to get a buyer's attention for that kind of thing, but that's also where images and video might come into play. But it's just so hard to control. It might not be worth it if it's not particularly lucrative, or it makes it difficult for you to solve that problem. Maybe that's a SKU that you want to abandon. Those are the kinds of things that I would typically want to take into account when it comes to returns, but you've got to be monitoring that on a regular basis. Even if you're not selling shoes and clothing, it's just it's critical to be proactive about it, because it really can make a difference in protecting your account health.
Yeah, and I have noticed that there's such a huge hike in purchases related to homemade clothing and accessories. Due to the current pandemic, people are not able to go out and buy clothes, so they are switching over to Amazon. So of course, clothing is something that I've mentioned. It has high interest return rates. So Nithin, what can you do to prevent bad reviews? Because you have had over 10 years of experience in customer success. So what do you think, according to you, will help sellers prevent bad reviews?
I think it's just a mix of everything that we've discussed so far, right? It's about having the right product and being really proactive. I think that's a fantastic word, right? Being proactive. A lot of people, they're not very proactive in terms of, it's an e-commerce selling. So you really, customers, you don't face the customers. When you go to a shop, when you go to a brick and mortar store, you have all these excited sales guys trying to sell you the product, and they let you feel the product. They let you really, the experience of going to a brick and mortar store. And I think to give you a better example, let's keep the category limited to clothing itself. When you go to a clothing store, they let you try the product. They let you try the different sizes, whichever is comfortable. And like Scott mentioned again, you don't have to worry about whether the medium size is going to fit me or the large size is going to fit me. The salesman there is going to bring you the dress. He's going to let you try both the sizes, let you try loads of different products before you finally make a call and make a decision to buy, right? So in this case, that's not the case. A customer needs to know the size, and again, for whatever reasons, you have different international buyers selling cross-border across the world, right? So probably a European company might have a different size specification that of a US company. Right, so all that confusion might arise, and customer may not be informed enough to really know the difference between the two sizes. So it then becomes really important for us to really address those issues. It could be probably through the listing. It could be if there's a customer who's mentioned about the size, immediately proactively reach out to that customer through those replying to those reviews. Ensure that he's responded to within the 3 hours. And I think it should be, if possible, sooner than that, right? Address those issues. Tell them, explain the product and explain what are the options that you have available in terms of what alternatives can be done. Of course, there's limited options available, and when you're selling through Amazon, it's not like, you can just ask the seller to send it across and then you can ship them another product. It's not as easy as that. But then yes, point is you need to be on top of those reviews, because those negative reviews really are the key thing. It gives you a direction in terms of really making those changes in terms of either adding new products or redefining the whole product line. helping improvise the product. So what we can probably, if what we can do at SellerApp is we have these buy box, we have these alerts that you can set up, in the platform itself. Like Scott mentioned, we're already working on something for the order defect as for the return rate as well. But currently what we already have is to track and monitor the negative reviews and the ratings. So there is a notification that kind of gets triggered the moment your any ASIN, any number of ASINs, you can just track all those ASINs that you're selling on Amazon. And you can set up those alerts. You can set up to what level, if you want to be notified. Even for a 4-star rating, you can do that. If it's a 3-star rating, 2-star, it's customizable. So you can just leave those settings for those ASINs and then let SellerApp do those, notify you when you have negative reviews, right? So then immediately you can go and address those in Amazon. I think that's the key thing, being proactive in terms of resolving those and addressing those customers.
Yeah, that is such good advice. Thank you, Nithin. And as we figured out till now, one person handling this Amazon feedback mechanism and everything can get kind of complicated. So Scott, do you suggest that we have like a second set of eye for your Amazon account?
I think everybody needs that. It's really important. Even the most seasoned, sophisticated sellers, really it's beneficial for you to have someone who is looking at your account from a different perspective, no matter the size of the account. I mean, I've hardly ever seen a seller that couldn't do something to improve what they're doing. And when you're too close to the problem, after working with thousands of sellers, the problems are always the same. And it's whether it's a super critical problem or whether it's a small problem, the problem is you're too close to the problem. You can't see it yourself, and therefore you can't implement the solution steps that you need. I was just talking to a consultant this morning for my business, and they see things differently than you see your own business. They see the solutions, they see the problems. When you reach out to someone who is an independent third party, somebody who's impartial but hired to help you, having that type of consultation or that type of coaching is invaluable. Because they can be impartial, they can give you insights and perspectives that they've seen across multiple different accounts. They can take a problem where you're beating your head against the wall and save you all kinds of time and all kinds of money, because they know what the solutions are as soon as you tell them the problem. When we solve problems, we look at things in a holistic way to make sure that we're doing whatever is best for you, for your situation, and you might not know what that is. You might have identified a pain point, but you don't know the way around it. You might not even have identified the fact that it's painful enough to be able to do something about it. And so having someone else who's a second set of eyes come in and look at things. What could you do to improve your operation proactively? What could you do proactively in terms of account health to be able to make sure that you're going to be able to continue to sell through Q4? What other opportunities do you have that you haven't considered? What keywords could you be putting in for Q4? What bundles could you be creating? Are you going to remember to change your gift wrap settings? All kinds of things that you might not be considering because of the fact that you're the only one looking at your account, or your team is the only one looking at your account. Everybody coming in with their diverse viewpoints and their diverse perspectives and experience, it might not be the same as having somebody else come in and see things more clearly than you can see for yourself. You know your business better than other people know your business, but you don't necessarily know every single aspect that you should be considering, or the money that you're leaving on the table, or the risks that are there that you simply can't see because they haven't shown up yet. And I'll leave you with an example. When they went to build and launch and sail on the Titanic, they never thought it would sink. They thought it was unsinkable. And so when it came time to save lives, they couldn't do it. They didn't have enough life rafts, enough lifeboats. They only had enough for half of the people who were in the dire situation that they were in. And that happens a lot of the time with people who are selling on Amazon. They think, I'll deal with this when it becomes a problem, when in fact, proper planning and strategy could have prevented you from ever having to experience this dire situation to begin with. And so that's another way where having another perspective can be particularly valuable.
Yeah, and I've noticed that people, especially sellers, get so emotionally attached to their product that they think that there's nothing wrong with it. So it's really important to have like a second set of eyes that can act like a neutralizer to you, and then that can help you understand why people are not understanding your product or why people are not liking your product. So thank you for clarifying that, Scott. And now we're reaching the end of our session, and I want to thank both of you for being here. So to end the session, I want to ask one last question to both of you here. That is, can you name, Scott, 2 best practices that a seller should be considering to maintain their accounts? And the same goes to you, Nithin. So let's get started with Scott first.
The biggest thing is to make sure that you're equipped to be able to find root cause so that you can be able to effectively address that in a plan of action. Somebody on your team is going to be responsible for writing plans of action to get ASINs reinstated or to get your account reinstated, heaven forbid. But you've got to be skilled and equipped to do that. You don't want to be stuck, in a situation where, hey, you've got a dire circumstance and you can't find somebody to address it, or you don't know where to go or what to do. Maybe you just need a little bit of help. We make it as easy as possible to engage with clients. And so if you only need a little bit of help or you only need a little bit of advice, then you can come to our site and engage with us that way. And we can come in and help you edit your plan of action, or we can help you come up with a game plan, or we can help you figure out, how you can best address some, obscure situation. We specialize in that. We fix things like that all the time. And we don't mind. It doesn't have to be some big engagement. We don't even require contracts or long engagements at all. We want to do whatever is necessary to help you right now fix something. Of course, it's helpful when you have an ongoing relationship and we can be invested to help you get the most out of your account. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're accessible to everybody, from the very largest brands to the smaller, just getting started sellers and everybody in between. We've helped them all. We enjoy those relationships, and part of that is helping people be better equipped to be able to respond with appropriate plans of action that will be accepted. We don't mind helping you get to the place where you can do that yourselves. That's part of what the book is about that we're going to be putting out. But we're also happy to serve as easy place for you to be able to pick up the phone or be able to send an email to say, hey, we want to get some time on your schedule to get you to do this for us. We don't mind certainly offering that as a monthly service to help people who have a regular number of issues with seller performance. So that, that's obviously one area, is to be able to write the plan of action effectively that's going to be accepted. I don't ever mind encouraging sellers to do that on their own. Hey, take a shot at it. Read what you need to read and go to the seller forums and study how to write a plan and go ahead and submit that yourself. But if it gets rejected the first or second time, I wouldn't do any more than that without hiring a professional, because you don't want to put your account at risk. And to expect that you're going to be able to do that on your own, I think sellers can do that, absolutely. But you just don't want to keep trying, you want a specialist, know when to hire a specialist, know when to outsource something, know when that makes sense. You might be able to do it. In fact, you might be really skilled at writing plans of action. And I work with people who have been used to writing their own all the time, but they just don't want to have to deal with that anymore. Maybe the most valuable role that you have in your business is sourcing. Why are you wasting your time writing plans of action when you could be bringing more product into your company to sell? Maybe it's relationships, whatever it is. Make sure that you're doing things that only you can do, that are the most valuable things that you can do with your time for your business. And writing plans of action and all of those headaches having to do with listing optimization or getting an ASIN reinstated or getting help with ungating, that might not be your area of specialization. So don't beat your head against the wall. Save a bunch of time and money by hiring a specialist. Those are some of the things that are important to know, because if you keep doing the same things, trying to achieve success, you're delaying the inevitable of, if you're not going to achieve success, you want somebody else to help you so that you could get done a lot faster. In the end, it's less expensive, especially if we're helping you along the way, training you and equipping you to do some of these things on your own. If that's something you want to do, we're perfectly fine with that. So it's important to know what's necessary, know the things that are going to be the most beneficial to your business, and reach out and get a second set of eyes.
That is true. And I've noticed that some of the Amazon sellers have like businesses that scale too fast and then they get profitable too fast. And when that's happening, they get too confused. They don't know how to handle too many things at the same time. So I would suggest for you sellers out there, if your Amazon business is successing too fast, and if you can see your future, if you think that you're successing too fast, and if you're not, and if you need like a set of eyes to monitor and give you advice, these two people are the best for you.
You know, that is a good point. I see that all the time. Somebody who's stuck at $250,000 a year, but they don't know what to, they're great at that, or they're great at being a $1 million seller, but they don't know how to get to 3 million, or somebody who's at 5 million and they don't know how to get to 10 million. They might not be able to see or have the right things in place in order to be able to get to that next level. And sometimes you could figure that out in an hour. And 1 hour consultation, you'll know what to do or what not to do.
And with this, we have come to the end of the session. I hope everyone who's listening enjoyed it. And if you like this video, go click that like button and turn it blue. And do subscribe to our community to get more content on Amazon selling. And we have a lot of tips and tricks coming up for you. SellerApp has a free tools that you can check out. I will link them down below. And do sign up with us for a free trial, and we can make your Amazon selling journey a tiny bit easier. So thank you for being here, and I will see you next week. Next week is week 2, and we will have some really good speakers to help you understand your current business. Thank you.